Hello, my name is Dr. David Palmeter. I'm a practicing clinical psychologist and professor of psychology. I've created this YouTube channel for parents and couples to help promote happiness, wellness, and resilience in their family lives. I'd like to talk today about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, parental lunacy. And I'd also like to share a promise that I'm offering to parents by creating this YouTube channel. Regarding parental lunacy, I need to set a context. I've been a practicing child psychologist for about 30 years now, and for about the first 7 or so of those years, it would seem to me that from time to time, parents would become temporarily insane. We'd seem to have a good working relationship. It seemed that they valued what I had to offer. And then I'd say something that to me seemed innocent, and they'd become offended or hurt. It usually recovered by the next session, and our relationship would go on from there. But it surprised me. It made me feel kind of tentative sometimes about how I put things. But I didn't understand it. And then I became a parent, and I now have 3.0 adult children. And right from the first day of being a parent, I knew instantly what was going on. We parents love our kids so much it makes us crazy people. So in my case, there's a context before my wife and I, Leah, had our first child. We suffered from 3 years of infertility. And if you know anything about that, you'll know it's a special kind of hell on earth. And we went through 3 years of it, and perhaps I'll discuss it in another taping. But when we finally became pregnant with our eldest, we were so overjoyed and especially anxious. Those 9 months went by very slowly. And when our daughter was born in the hospital, we were healed instantly. Here it was, 3 years of agony, healed overnight. We felt like we were in Eden. And I remember when I was there in the delivery room and Morgan was born, and for some reason they allowed me back into the area that parents are normally not allowed in. I must have had a crazed look in my eye or something, but they let me back in there. And as the nurse was readying to do her work with our daughter, she started fussing, and I put my little finger in her mouth, and she began sucking on my finger. And at that moment, I was overwhelmed with a type of love I had never had before. It was so powerful it hurt. It felt difficult to breathe. I was so overwhelmed. And another time, maybe I'll tell you more about those early moments. But the point was that it was ecstasy, and an ecstasy that was overwhelming. The analogy I have is that other loves in my life were like being at the shore and deciding which waves I would ride, stand in front of and just let them go past me or jump up and down in them. But I was calling the shot. Very enjoyable, no doubt. This was like a wave, though, the love for a child that was so big it would take me knees over elbows and carry me where it wanted to go. And I think all we engaged parents have a love like that that's so overwhelming. So there we were, back to the hospital. We were getting the discharge instructions from the nurse. And we knew, my wife and I are both healthcare providers, so we knew she had to say many obvious things. If your daughter's crying, she could be hungry. Thank you. Good insight there. Change her diaper a couple times a day. Good health tip there. We appreciate that. It was about 40 minutes of a long list of obvious things like that. But what did we care? We were in Eden. She could have been teaching us anything that we already knew, and we would have been fine with it. We got home that night, though, and our daughter had blood discharge in her diaper. Really, really freaked us out. And I think it was even worse because we'd had the 3 years of infertility, and we were deeply troubled about that development. So I got the pediatrician on call on the phone, and I was in a panic. And I blurted out what happened, what was going on. And his first reaction was to try to be reassuring. Dave, your daughter's just been born. She's still going through a lot of hormonal changes. This is typical. It's even sort of expected. And my first ever lunatic for love reaction in my life, and I've since had so many I can't count them, but my first ever reaction was, well, if it's so blankety blank common, how come the blankety blank nurse at that blankety blank hospital didn't list it on that long list of blankety, except of course I wasn't saying blankety blank. Thinking that the real crisis was a psychiatric one, the pediatrician who I also worked with, and I think he felt comfortable with me. For that reason, he tried to make a joke. He said, Dave, think of it as her first period. At that point, I lost consciousness. Driving to the hospital years later to give birth to our youngest child, my wife brought up that incident again and said, that blankety blank better not come into the room, because I will blankety blank to him and I will put this in this, so she was still very enraged with that remark he had made, even though she understood he had good intention. So when I'm dealing with my co-parent lunatics, I try to remember that insanity. And I hope as I go through the suggestions and recommendations that I make through this channel that I'll be sensitive to that. So a promise I have first is that, to try to be sensitive to the overwhelming love you have for your child, those of you who are engaged in parenting. And the second thing is to offer you evidence that's science-based and how to be helpful to your children. There's almost too much information available for parents, but a lot of it isn't science-based, or a lot of it is highly subjective, or some of it's impractical. And I really want to give you information that you can use immediately, that's practical for your hectic lifestyles, and which has a solid science base that demonstrates its effectiveness. So I hope you'll find that to be the case, and tune in for what I have to offer. Until next time, please remember, we are made for love.